Good afternoon and welcome to the water cooler budget edition. As has now become a bit of a tradition, immediately after Jeremy Hunt, or whoever the then Chancellor is at the time, delivers their statement in the House of Commons, we analyse what that means for dental practice owners. Now, in short, with this statement, we anticipated there would be rabbits coming out of hats, there would be big announcements in lieu of an election pending this year, but this really didn't have the feel of a pre-election budget. So whilst it's been touted in the press that we may be looking at an election in May over the last 24 to 48 hours, this was not a pre-election budget. So in all likelihood, I think we can probably confirm now the election will be in the autumn, and thus there will probably be a preceding autumn statement ahead of that election, which is probably more likely to have more announcements in it to do with lower tax rates, which in turn will probably be more exciting than what he delivered today, because to be frank, there wasn't really a lot in today. So he spoke a little bit about how inflation is going to get below its 2% target later this year, which we kind of already knew, how the OBR was now predicting that even though we went into recession last quarter, we're going to look at 0.8% growth over the year. All fairly standard stuff. So the only real big announcements were around three things. The first was with regard to capital gains tax, and this won't affect, for the avoidance of doubt, anyone selling their dental practice, because this would only affect residential property assets. So if you have a residential portfolio and you're looking to sell it and you're a higher rate taxpayer, you would have previously paid 28% CGT. Going forward, you'll pay 24% CGT, which wasn't an announcement that was touted beforehand. There was the much touted announcements though with regard to national insurance. Again, not likely to affect a lot of dental practice owners who practice as limited companies, because actually this is not a cut on income tax, nor is it a cut on corporation tax, which is the two taxes that you pay if you earn your income through dividends, or indeed if you're a pensioner. So this affects workers, so probably more likely the dental nurses and the reception and management team in your practice, and indeed your associate dentist, or if you're a sole trader, because to cover the employed personnel first of all, we started off with 12% national insurance earlier this year. It was then reduced to 10% in January, and then we now are going to end up with 8% going forward into April, alongside the promise that that will continue coming down, is because there's a permanent tax cut until the next election. In addition to that, we've then got self-employed people who are currently paying class 4 national insurance contributions at 8%, and they are now going to drop to 6% from the beginning of April. So actually, to be fair, for a lot of the dental practice team, there probably is some relatively good news, albeit not particularly unexpected, in this budget in terms of the tax that they're paying. Also, what you've got is there was some tinkering around the edges of the child benefit laws, which may now mean that some associates or maybe particularly well-paid management staff who are subject to the high income child benefit tax charge will no longer be so, depending on what they earn. So that was set at £50,000. So if you had, if you earned more than £50,000, or indeed your partner did that you were living with, and you were claiming child benefit, you started to lose it and pay the high income child benefit tax charge at 50 grand, which was then tapered up to 60 grand. So by the time you got to 60 grand, it was cost neutral. So albeit you might be receiving the child benefit, it was coming out the wages of the partner, or indeed your wages, depending how you're structured. Those allowances have now been moved. So first of all, the high income child benefit tax charge doesn't kick in till £60,000, and the tapering has been elongated so you don't lose it entirely to £80,000. So what you may have, particularly if you have an associate dentist who maybe works 2 or 3 days a week, who maybe falls now underneath that 80 grand bracket, and they and previously they were obviously above 50 or £60,000, you may find that the £25.60 a week, or £16.95, depending if it's your first, second, third or fourth child, will now you're now receiving, get to retain, should I say, more of that child benefit. Outside of that, lots of tinkering around the edges. So an announcement for savers of the British Savings Bond, which will be a 3-year fixed rate introduced with the NSNI. So you can lock your savings up and get a better rate, but government backed, as well as the new British ISA, which again would be limited to £5,000, so not a big announcement, but would allow people to invest more on a tax-free basis, provided that those savings were supporting British companies. Again, a measure to try and encourage growth. Alcohol duty frozen, fuel, that 5% cut in fuel duty that was due to end got kicked into the long grass as as tends to happen in a lot of these budgets. If you're a bigger company and you're subject to the full expensing laws for companies buying assets, that was now extended to leased assets. It's probably not going to affect a lot of dental practice owners. But aside from that, that's it. There's not really a lot else in it. So we'll probably get an autumn statement, which will probably have a lot more in it in September, October time. But the good news is there was no big clangers. So people selling their practices today aren't suddenly going to pay more tax tomorrow. And as I said, for most of the dental practice team, there probably is a little bit of some good announcements around the edges. But of course, with national living wage going up from £10.42 to £11.44 next month, actually a lot of the pressures on dental practice owners in particular, if anything, are probably increasing come April, not decreasing as a result of this budget.